Their mistakes have been made through the fault of our advisors, who teach us how to debate, not how to live. There are also mistakes made by the students, who come to their teachers to develop, not their souls, but their wits. Thus, philosophy, the study of wisdom, has become philology, the study of words. Seneca, probably these words are still relevant even in our modern day. We don't study to live, but rather to gain. What Seneca said applies to philosophy and also other sciences more than 2 millennia, and we are still in square one. Not much has changed since. Seneca was one of the greatest minds of Rome. He followed the Stoic school of philosophy, which is of a Greek origin, which lasted about 5 centuries. So, what's Stoicism? And is it relevant in our modern day? The Stoicism, the basic concept of Stoic thinking, is that you can't change the world, but you can change your feelings towards it. Maybe you wanted to go out, but at that moment it was raining outside. What could you do? Can you stop the rain? Of course not. But you can overcome the frustration that you'll feel when this happens. You can use the power of mind to change the way you feel. There are 2 sides for a person that we must understand: emotions and mind. The weak is the one whose emotions dominate over his mind, so he follows what his heart desires. The strong one doesn't allow his emotions to cloud his judgments and behavior. Some accuse the Stoics of being made of stone. They deny that. They claim that they are humans as much as the others, but they have a high self-discipline and patience standing against adversities. The beginnings, Greece. The historians agree that Zeno of Citium is the founder of this philosophy. He preached his ideals in the porches of the Great Hall of Athens. The word stoa comes from Greek, which means porch. The Stoicism stems from this word. Zeno preached that the wise man must be free of agitation, not to be affected by joy or sadness, and to submit with no complaints to the fate. This philosophy is believed to replace an intellectual void in Greece after the death of Alexander the Great. The vast empire that he had built, his generals were fighting each other after him in order to get a portion of these lands. The following civil wars tore apart this short-lived empire into several smaller kingdoms. For the great era of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle was gone. That's why this philosophy was as a consolation for a lost glory. Chrysippus is considered to be the 4th greatest Greek philosopher. He was a major figure in the Stoic school. Although he wrote a lot, unfortunately all of his works were lost. Rome is always seen as the intellectual successor of Greece. They translated their philosophy into practical applications when they ruled over 5 million square km. There isn't one specific philosophy that shaped the empire, but Stoicism had a major impact on many important figures. The most important Roman Stoics were Seneca, Nero's mentor, Musonius Rufus, Epictetus, who was a slave but later gained freedom. And this has impacted a lot on his views. He was also the student of Musonius Rufus and their greatest emperor, Marcus Aurelius. What made Rome distinct from Greece was that they always took the practical approach, unlike the Greeks, who were very immersed in theory. In other words, they preferred realism over idealism. This reflected well into their thought. Their literature was not as sophisticated as the Greeks, but they always tried to simplify things. They thought that some aspects of philosophy can be understood by anyone, not to be applied literally, but to help a simple person to improve his life and his thought. Philosophy is not exclusive to the elite. What are the basics of Stoicism? Stoicism is concerned with studying 3 aspects: logic, which is to understand human nature, and human mind physics, or rather the study of nature. These 2 are the prelude to self-improvement based on the 3rd, ethics. The main goal of Stoicism is to reach virtue and to obtain the spiritual, not the material happiness. They think the way to achieve this is by harmonizing man with the nature, because he is part of it from observing the world. They notice that there's a complex harmony that is derived from a divine source. Some consider it metaphysics, others say it is pantheism, but they all agree that the material world does not come from nothing. But to look at things from another perspective, nature is governed by rules. Does this imply that humans is also follow the rules, or to say that we have no free will? Determinism. Over the course of history, there were 2 major theories that try to describe human behavior. 1, determinism, which implies that since man is part of nature, then everything in him, including his thoughts and behaviors, is derived from it. This theory is also called hard determinism, fatalism, etc. too. Compatibilism, which admits the determinism theory, but this does not necessarily mean that humans don't have free will. This theory is also called soft determinism. The Stoics leaned on the second theory. The body is physical and follows the laws of physics, but the mind is independent of it, and it has some divine essence in its seeing that our birth involves the blending of these two things, the body that we share with animals, and rationality and intelligence that we share with God. Most of us incline to the former, wretched and dead, though it is while only few inclines to the divine and blessed. Epictetus, probably these words are compatible with the religious teachings where if man followed his cravings, is worse than animals, but if he preferred the mind, he higher than angels searching for the freedom within and investing in our minds, and in seeking a higher intellectual state, the Stoics believe that we can reach the inner freedom. This doesn't mean freedom in actions or to get what we want, but rather facing the adversities of fate with wisdom and patience, and eventually, happiness against all odds. Seneca called for loving fate, not only accepting it. What is a good man's role? To offer himself to fate. It is a great consolation that we are swept along together with the universe. Epictetus thought life is random, like dice. The first one to propose this was Plato. We must accept what happens to us, just like throwing dice. And after that, we must accommodate with the changes that will happen. Plato, the Republic, what we have. And what we don't have a full control over everything. There are some preceding things that shape us even before we are born, like family, reputation, and richness. We may be able to change some, but never all. On the other hand, there are things that we have full control over, like thoughts, morals, beliefs, desires, goals. The Stoics think that we tend to seek those things that we don't have full control over, like money and lust. Thus, we voluntarily enslave ourselves. Epictetus, who was a slave but became free, said, "The free man is the man who frees himself from what others desire otherwise. He is a slave even if he's a lord among his people. For this, let's abandon things we can't control." There's no need to buy a fancy car in order to satisfy your ego or just to impress the others. Instead, you should invest your time in learning new things. When you see someone with power, remind yourself that you don't need power. When you see someone rich, try to find what's more important than money. You may see a man's beautiful wife. Why don't you lust for her? Power, money, beauty. If you don't desire these things, you should realize that you have something much great. Epictetus, for one's misery comes from lusting things he can't get. Even if he could get, he'd be so anxious of losing them, so he won't enjoy having them. And since he's nothing without them, he is not worthy of having them. This is not to be understood as encouraging sloth and doing nothing. On the contrary, seek money and social status and fine food. But don't let them be your highest aim. It is not in the capacity of man to get what he wants, but he is capable of not wanting what he can't get. And also to have maximum happiness from the simple things he has. Seneca, Stoicism in adversity's life is not stable. We definitely stumble a lot in our lives. So, what do the Stoics recommend in these circumstances? It is possible to abbreviate all in Epictetus' words. It's not the circumstances that bring us misery, but the way we look at things. Losing a closed one, sickness, losing in trade or business. These could happen to any of us. We consider them to be bad things because we chose to, but if we look at them from an objective view and try to learn from them, not only we could bear these misfortunes, but they'll be positive experiences for the future. Only the hard events show the real men. Epictetus, when Nero ordered his mentor Seneca to commit suicide, he didn't fear or show any sign of weakness. Instead, he embraced his wife and daughter and entered the bathroom to cut his veins, and told his friend, "I didn't have enough time to reward you, but I leave you with the best thing I have, my lifestyle. Always remember what I was preaching you, and you'll get the true virtue." And with his last breath, he said, "Thus my soul gets freed and leaves to reunite with the Creator." Marcus Aurelius was the greatest Roman emperor, but he lived a very harsh life as a ruler. He waged 2 wars on the Germanic tribes in the north, and he mourned the death of his sons, but he never showed any sign of weakness. Instead, he wrote commandments to himself and others about the importance of self-discipline and bearing difficulties. They were later compiled into one book called Meditations, which is still a bestseller even today. Yes, Stoicism is hard, and not everyone can handle it. And not every Stoic follows its commandments literally, as Epictetus said, "By the God, Show me one true Stoic. But no one denies that patience rewards with serenity and peace of mind, even in the most difficult situations. Philosophy, for them, is a way of learning the art of life. Yes, life is art, but as Epictetus said, art does not mean beauty, but living a decent and respectable life despite the harshness of the world, or as Marcus Aurelius. The art of life is wrestling more than dancing criticisms against Stoicism. There are many criticisms against Stoicism over the centuries, because not every aspect is clear. I'll show you here some of them. 1. Man is part of nature, so he must harmonize with. Some refuse this idea. If we look to life, we see only death and fights even in the lower species of creatures than man. How's nature any good? 2. How can we derive moral values from nature? Can the tree in my garden teach me lessons in life? I think that these are derogatory words by the materialist. 3. Baruch Spinoza objected about the control of mind over body. He said that man is only a group of conflicting feelings. In order to overcome one, he must invent its opposite feeling. 4. Excessive resistance of feelings may adapt the self to curb them. This may lead to an idle, cold-blooded, and isolated person. 5. In the same context, not caring may lead the person to succumb to injustice and aggression. Thank you for watching. If you like our content, please subscribe. This helps us a lot.